Today we're going to do color correction using the adjustment layers in Adobe Photoshop. First off, I am in the photography workspace, and you need to make sure that you can see your histogram. I'm going to click on the hamburger menu and make sure it's an expanded view and that I can see colors. So, a lot of people would look at this and they wouldn't really be able to tell that there was a lot going on with the color. The histogram is not really telling us anything. If we click here, we can look at a all channels view, and you can see that we do have all three channels. So it's not obvious about what we should do. What I like to do is go get my eyedropper tool and find something that should be white. Now you can't always trust people's teeth, so I like to go into the whites of their eyes and just sample that color, and you will see, if you double click on it, that it's actually extremely blue. So that is what the camera thought was white. So we need to make that look white, and it's actually blue right now. So the way to fix that is to go down in your layers panel. We're going to go to the cookie, and there's several that you could choose. I like to use color balance. So we're going to go to the opposite of what we see. We can choose midtones, shadows, or highlights. Now, all people, no matter what race, are in the midtones. So let's go ahead and start with midtones. We need to go the opposite of what we have. So if we have too much blue, we need to go to the opposite. So that's either going to be red or yellow. Now, on this one, we need to add a little bit of both. So I'm going to add a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow. Now, let's look at a before and after and see if we see any changes. Before. After. Do you see that her skin has got a much more of a glow to it? Her hair is more vibrant, and the leaves behind her have more green. I'm going to do that again. Before, after. I think you can definitely tell that there was a tinge of blue back here once you see that it's off. I'm also going to go to highlights and do the same thing. Add just a little bit of cyan and a little bit of blue. So I think that's a good change. I might have gone... No, I think that's pretty good. Now, that one is not as obvious. Let's go to one that's very, very obvious. I think we can all tell by looking at this that the red channel is way, way too high. If you look at the histogram, you can see that there's way too much red. If we go to all channels view, you can see that there's pretty much no blue. So we need to add blue. I'm going to go back to the color balance. And so let's start in highlights because snow is white, so that would be highlighted. And we need to add a bunch of cyan. One thing I think is interesting in this photo is to look at how the bricks change. So let's add some of this blue, cyan. All right, let's, oh, that was too far. That's before, after. So the bricks, if you see the bricks, they're definitely getting better. Let's go to midtones and do the same thing. Add a little bit of cyan. All right, there we go. Now, one thing, let me turn this off. If you look at the sky, you can see the shadows, the dark, also has a red tinge. So let's go into shadows. There we go. And I think I still need to do a little bit more on highlights. Now, sometimes you might need to add just a tinge of magenta back in. Realize magenta is not the same thing as red. It has some purple and some blue in it. So I'm thinking that's looking a lot better. Sometimes when photos are really out like this, it's hard to get them back. But notice that even the light is looking more like a yellow light that you would see. So I think that's pretty good for as bad as that was. So once again, before, after, and I did use color balance. So on this one's kind of strange. Let's look and see what the camera thought was white. If I click on something white, we can see that it's actually green. So this one doesn't need a lot. Let's look at a highlight. It also is not quite as green, but it is green. So I am going to use curves on this one so it can be a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to go to curves. And I'm going to go to the green channel. And then you can see that most of the green is here in the highlight. So I like to click and add a spot right before where I'm going to do, and then just pull that down just a little bit. If you look at the before and after, this one's more subtle, but do you see that this was actually a gray backdrop here? And it has really greened up the lettuce. But now, another problem with this, I think we still have too much green. Pull that down just a tad. There we go. Another problem with this is very unappetizing. This is supposed to be salmon, so let's see if I can try and fix that. I'm going to go to the background layer, and I want to select just the salmon. You can use any of the selection tools. Good choices would be the quick selection tool or the object selection tool. I did a video on that earlier if you want to look back on the selection tools. Object selection works pretty well with this one. So if you click on object selection and just tell the AI, select that for me. Okay, now that we've got that, I'm going to add a separate curves where we can do just on right there and just the red. So this time we're going to go to red, and we want to add, so on this side of the curves. So I'm going to click a spot so that I can deal with just this, and then up that red and actually bring over this some. No, I'm taking it too far. Actually, I'm glad it did this. If ever you mess it up and you've got it, it just looks crazy. You've done some crazy stuff. Just reset it. Right there, reset. So let's go back to red. And, oh, I'm on green. Red. And I just want to up it just a little bit so we get more red. You don't want to go too far with that. Just a little bit of red. Okay, on this one, I think you can tell there's way too much yellow in the selection, definitely. I usually use color balance on everything, but I did want to show you something that will work with curves. If we put curves on here, and we're going to go to the red, because realize yellow is in the red, and you can use this little tool right here. Click on the areas that need to pull down the red, click and pull your mouse down. And do you see it made a point for us? So I actually went a little too far. Let me pull it back. Go down here, maybe a little bit more out of this. That is looking much more white. Before, after. That's definitely the more white. This is looking white. So do you see that it made the little points? So that is using curves, but using this little tool, the little hand tool, to tell it what areas to work with. Now this one, if we look at the histogram, we can see that there are no true blacks or true whites in here at all. So we actually have a problem with levels in this. And this happens to old photographs like this, just because the emulsions are kind of dying on them. So first off, I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. You're going to tell it, this is where your black level starts, and this is where your white level starts. So now you can see we have true whites and true blacks. And it's actually making the color look worse. You can tell there's too much red. So now that we've got the levels right, I'm going to add color balance. And I'm going to go mid-tones, of course, and bring the cyan in and a little bit of blue. That's already looking much, much better. Before, after. And look at what the background's doing. Now let's look at their hair, which they all have brunette or darker hair. That would be in the shadows. So let's add a little bit to the shadows to bring, there we go. Not much, I just did a -11. So before and after. Now this one you can tell obviously has a lot of purple in it. Let's do the little trick with the eyedropper. Wow, that is a lot of purple. So this one, I would use color balance again, but you have to deal with both reds and blues. So this one's a little bit harder. I'm in the mid-tones. A little bit of red, a little bit of yellow. She's already looking better. Her skin tone, she's very pale. Also the bricks back there. That's already better. I could work on it a little bit more. So that's the basics of color correction using color balance and curves.